Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. How's everyone doing today? My name's Jason, and here we are, another episode of the Painfully Honest Tech Friday Morning Coffee Show, where I drink coffee and we talk about tech-related stuff. What's up? Pedro from Portugal is here. We got tech for your needs as always. Is here. Lo-fi dogs. Kayvon, good to see you guys. What is going on? It's Friday. I guess it's a holiday weekend. I like one of the downsides, if you can call it a downside, of like working by yourself in a dark, dingy room in your home is that you never know when there is a holiday coming, and so it's a holiday weekend, I guess. So yeah. I got videos to do this weekend. It won't be a holiday for old Painfully Honest Tech. I got to do a video about the 8 Sleep mattress that I've been chilling on, literally chilling on, actually, for the past month or so. It's a smart mattress, some kind of smart mattress. Whenever I think about, I always quote, like, paraphrase, I guess, uh, Starship Troopers, because that's one of my favorite lines from Starship Troopers. There's some kind of smart bug. And anyway, uh, Thomas, thank you. That's a. I got it off of the song that I use for the intro stuff. The countdown is off of what is it? That music thing. Yeah. Oh, I'm still not totally awake. What is it? That anyway, it'll come to me in a minute. I got it off of music free, like not free, but you pay for it. Oh my God, it's starting off like this. Ace, good morning to you, Jimmy. Good morning to you. Tom is here. Steven, Alejandro, AJ. Everybody's in the house. We're just doing this thing. Yeah, I got a little hip hop, lo-fi music in the background because as a YouTuber, I think it's actually I'm contractually obligated to use lo-fi hip hop in just about anything that I do, and that's okay because I like the lo-fi hip hop. It's very smoothing. I mean, soothing. I don't know. So, what's new out there in the world of the people in the audience? Because yeah, it's been just a busy week. JSLA 001. Good morning to you, Taz, Scott. Yeah, everybody's feeling good. Um, it's just been a really weird, not a weird week. It's been a good week, but a weird week. Like I made a bunch of videos that I knew that nobody would watch, which is always kind of like a weird thing to do. Epidemic Sound, thank you. I knew it started with an E. My brain is like, not like I've got a couple of cylinders missing in the brain. I got to get some. I got to get some lubricant. Yes. Good afternoon in the UK. What is it? It's almost 11 o'clock here, so it would be probably like what 4 p.m., 5 p.m. in the UK, something like that. I think it's 5 hours difference, isn't it? Well, no, because I'm an hour. I'm an hour different than I used to be when I used to have to call people in the UK all the time when I was a musician and I worked with people in the UK. But that's when I lived on the East Coast. So yeah, I think it's probably 5 p.m. Right? 16:49. 16. So 4:49. I have to whenever I see like 24-hour time, I have to do the math. I have to think like whatever it is minus 12. Oh, I've never been good at the math, which is a good thing to be. Not It's good to not be good at math when you are a small business entrepreneur, as I am, because yeah, I mean, yeah, whatever. Anyway, I was talking about this mattress that I got to do a video about. It's a memory foam. It's like a combination memory foam and other stuff mattress, and then it has this thing that goes over top of it called a pod, and the pod has water that flows through it, and it has sensors and stuff, and it can. What all does it tell you? Let me look it up. I can say that it lets me know how terribly I sleep, but um, but I don't know that I've gotten any better at sleeping. So let's see. Sleep fitness. My overall sleep fitness score for this past week Not good. Um, Although on Monday I did get a time slept 96%. So it looks at it puts together a full score for you. It says in the past 7 days I've had 15% fewer sleep interruptions. Uninterrupted sleep is like your leads to increase whatever. Time slept, wake up consistency, time to sleep, as in how long it takes me to go to sleep, time to get out of bed, which usually takes me longer than it should. My bedtime, which I've tried to make around like between 10 and 11 p.m., but for some reason it was 1:45 a.m. on Tuesday. Wake up around 7:30 ish, except for when I woke up at 3:30 on Thursday. The stages of sleep, like REM, deep sleep, light sleep, out of bed, like when did I get out of bed during the night, tosses and turns, average around 5. Sleeping heart rate starts at about, somewhere between 80 and 60 beats per minute is my average. Average respiratory rate is looking to be around 18, 19 breaths per minute. So it tracks that, and it also has this like vibrating, it's this vibrating thing that, like, it has an alarm built in, but it's not like a sound alarm. It vibrates the bed. So you just suddenly feel like on your face, and it is effective because it's really bizarre. It's a bizarre sensation when your bed starts vibrating at you, and you can snooze it. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, as Ace says, Ace has been sleeping for 49 years and still sucks at it. I have been also sleeping for most of my 49 years, and so yeah, I don't know, and I don't understand why the 24-hour time clock thing is better, because to me it's like, I don't know, I just 12 seems like a much more reasonable number. Once I get up to like 13, then I'm like, oh my god, it seems like a long time. Um, Thomas, I've tried the sleep cycle apps, um, and they do work pretty well. This bed is like next level. Like, you can get either the pod to go over your current mattress, or you can get the whole setup. I guess, since I'm talking about it, it's 8sleep is the name of the bed. If you go to, I think it's 8sleep.com/painfully honest tech. That's my code. I think you get some discounts. I guess they told me that Memorial Day weekend is a big weekend for mattress purchasing, which I didn't know. So yeah, it's it's really interesting. It's really interesting because I always knew that I was not like getting enough sleep or anything like that, but I never had like hardcore consistent data to back that up. But now I do, and I think in the month, I think it's been like 5 weeks that I've used this. I've gotten 8 hours of sleep one time, and I know I should be getting 8 hours. I mean, imagine what I could do on a full 8 hours of sleep every night. I could, dare I say it, rule the world. That is a quote from a Beatles movie. Anybody who knows which Beatles movie can put it in the comments for a thumbs up from me, I guess. If that's what you're looking for, I'll give you a thumbs up. But that is a quote from a Beatles movie. I tend to do this all the time. For the people in 18, 19, yeah, I don't understand the metric system either. I will say, like, I had my phone was set to tell me when I was supposed to go to bed, and of course, like, it would go into shutdown mode, with black and white screen and all that kind of stuff at 10:30 or something, and then it would say it's time to go to bed at 11 o'clock, and I'd be like, don't tell me what to do, freaking phone. But with this bed, for some reason, like, I'm getting sleepy at around 11 o'clock, and so I get in bed. The only problem, the thing that I haven't been able to get over, is the reading slash watching things slash whatever in bed after I get there, and then in bed after I wake up. So yeah, that's my biggest problem. Like if I could just get in bed and sleep, I would be scoring like I'd be getting straight A's in sleep. But right now I'm carrying like a C average. So actually no, my average is like 56. So I'm getting a D. No, I'm failing. I'm failing in sleep. That's sad. As Alejandro says, everybody you get a score in school and you get a score at work. So why not getting a score in getting a score in sleep if you're not good at sleeping at least gives you some like hard data to back up the idea that you are not doing a very good job. Because everybody, everybody talks about the importance of sleep and all that kind of stuff, but it's like you have your sleep habits, right? So it's kind of a weird no man's land, right? Where you just kind of you think you're not that bad, but then then you realize you're much worse than you thought you were. Yeah, Tech Odyssey, you should you should hit him up and be like, man, I don't sleep at all. I'll be a test for your Eat Sleep mattress. They are pretty cool, and the app is pretty slick. I found that sometimes the app doesn't initially recognize like when I got up versus like when I actually got out of bed, and it seems to correct itself over the course of time, but sometimes it doesn't recognize like so when I woke up at 3:30 in the morning on Thursday night, and then I eventually got back to sleep at like 6 a.m. It didn't register that sleep. So I mean, I guess it's asking a lot for it to notice like all the weird inconsistencies of somebody's sleep, but it is much better than anything that I've tried before. I've tried, like I said, the apps, and I've tried all kinds of different things. Um, I've tried the apps that like record you when you make noise. Have you guys ever tried that? So it records you when you make noise when you're sleeping. So of course I snore, and so there would just be like these like 10-second long recordings of me snoring, which I don't know. It was depressing. It was too depressing. Speaking of depressing, let's transition away from the 8 Sleep. But if you're interested in checking it out, the website 8sleep.com uh, / painfully honest tech, and you will get there. So anyway, speaking of sponsors, once again, we're reaching the end of the 3 months of the Restream sponsorship, and I have been trying to get people to go to Restream, sign up, try it out for free, and so people have done it. Some people have done it, but the performance has. I don't know if they're gonna like re-up with me, which is sad because I really need them to. So even if you're like, go over, check out Restream, sign up for a free account. If you like, help. The link is in the description down below. Just go click through and see what it's all about. If you have any interest at all in live streaming whatsoever, like Tech Odyssey, I know you live stream all the time. Go check it out, man. Ace, you might want to do some streaming. Anyway, I only proselytize about Restream, as we talked about on the live stream the other night, because it's actually been the smoothest live streaming experience I've had since I started using it. And they're adding all these crazy features, like you can record. It's not officially out yet, but they're putting together this feature where instead of like just streaming, you can also just record. So if you want to do your YouTube videos and utilize some of the features that are in Restream, then then you then you can just like hit record and then download the full res file, like a 1080p file, and go from there, which makes it really easy. And if you use like OBS or something like that, you can also put OBS, RTMP OBS through that. And yeah, I won't mention the name of the other company because but I used StreamYard for a long time, when they, because they were the only game out when Google Hangouts went away. And that service grew over time, and they were always really good, and they were really responsive to me. But Restream just seems to have it locked down a lot more in terms of stability, and they're pushing out new features freaking all the time. Like this recording thing is new. The backup music that I'm streaming with, like that's brand new. The fact that I think the one thing that they don't have, which I think is coming, is green screen support. But I mean, it's not a big deal for me. But I know like Travis and Greg and some other people always use green screens when they do their live streams, and for some reason Restream doesn't have green screen support. But with as many features as they're putting out, I'm sure. Ace, you should live stream, man. You should live stream. I mean, I think that's one thing that I asked a question about. I'm going to make some live stream videos here in the next couple of, I've started making some videos and I'm going to make more. One thing, when I did a poll on my community channel, a lot of people said that they just, they didn't know what the live stream about. They didn't know, like, they were nervous about being live on camera. They just had general sort of how do I get started or sort of anxieties about doing it. And the only way that you figure that stuff out is by like doing it. And it doesn't really matter if you don't know what you're going to talk about. I've come to find because I never know what I'm going to talk about. Sometimes I know what I'm going to talk about, but yeah, it is really fun. And then once you do it for a while and you get a group of people that come and then you have a conversation, I was really fortunate to start to have a bunch of people that I started live streaming with, like on Viper's Friday Night Viper show and that kind of stuff. But like, if you know other people doing YouTube and they're not live streaming, maybe get together with a bunch of people that are doing it and do it. It's a very fun experience, and I like it in a lot of ways. I like it better than like edited videos because I can be sort of conversational and react to people's questions and have like just interaction with people and have more of a fluid conversation. I like that a lot better in some ways than the edited videos. The edited videos, I don't know. Tom, thank you for the 2 Great British Pounds super chat. I appreciate it, man. Why no OLED on iPad like iPhone? Thanks. So I think part of it is the type of OLED screen they use and they would have to use. Now, this is something that I've heard. I don't know it to be absolutely 100% true. But I think the scale of the iPad, excuse me, would make it much more difficult to do the OLED panel. And also, like, OLED panels are pretty sensitive in terms of like pressure sensitivity and stuff. So it could be that something of that size, just from a physics standpoint, might put too much strain on an OLED panel. I don't know. I just know from my experience using an OLED TV and using the phones. I mean, the phone screens are so hard, right, that I don't think you could really do a ton of damage. But when you have the tensile strength of a piece of glass over a wider spread, like on an iPad, then I think that it might be a bigger issue. But now they've got micro LED, mini LED. I don't know why somebody yelled at me because I said the wrong thing in the live stream the other day about my TCL TV that's over there. It's mini LED, right? Because micro LED is another technology that's like still, well, it exists, but it's way far off being like a thing, right? Yeah, Ace, you should maybe you and Tech for Your Needs and a bunch of people could get together and do some live streaming. It would be fun. Let me know when you're doing it. I'll come and hang out. Hugo buys me a coffee and or a soda pop. Thank you, man. Thank you for the $5 Canadian. And yeah, It's always good. It's a mini LED. Yes, thank you, Tom. Yeah. Mm. So, oh yeah, that's here's a good point. Pawan says the Apple Pencil could be one of the reasons as well. The Apple Pencil, I think, was like one of the things that came into existence around the time that Apple went into OLED for the iPhone. So, yeah, that's a good point. That very well could have something to do with it. Um, so, Tech for Your Needs asks, the OLED panel on the Samsung tablets works fine. Why not on the iPad? That is, again, like, I really don't know. I do know that Samsung's OLED panels are different than what. Well, God, I don't know. It's because I know that Apple buys some OLED panels from Samsung. I don't know. I don't know what the difference is. Anyway, it could just be a straight up like cost thing where they won't make as much money or it won't be cost effective to use them in the iPads. I don't know. I don't know. My lawn guy is here. Uh, that's yeah. I'm not, does anybody else have people that mow their lawn? Like mowing the lawn was the adult thing that I hated the most, and so after a while, my wife and I were like, oh, it's like I think we pay him like $30 a week or something to mow the lawn, and because our lawns would get terrible, it would just look ugly. All kinds of weeds and all that. Just like we would be the people on the street that had like the too gross looking lawn. And so finally we are just like this guy was mowing the lawn of our neighbor and we were like, hey, how much to do ours? And yeah, he's opening the gate to the backyard right now. So um, that's Thomas. That's interesting that OLED gives you a headache because I've heard the other way around that that like LED screens can give people headaches, and and so yeah, I guess there are several Thomases in this chat. I've heard that the refresh rate of the LED panels can be more difficult to deal with on the eyes than OLED. OLED has like the refresh rate on OLED is like infinite basically. So yeah, that's interesting. I mean, because I love my OLED TV, and I haven't seen anything in an OLED like from a television until I got this mini LED TV from TCL, which I have to do a review on sometime, and I'm just behind on my game. Um, but yeah, the mini LED is really impressive because the one thing that I like about the mini LED right now is that OLED is great for like watching movies and anything that's got like a lot of contrast and visual and all that kind of thing. Um, Mini LED has that same kind of contrast, but what I found is that it can be brighter and it can have like more punchy, poppy colors, but still keep a lot of the contrasty goodness of OLED. And I don't think one's better than the other. I just think that like they say if you have a brightly lit room where your TV is, then you should get an LED TV because it can be brighter. And Samsung is very well known for that. And so TCL is basically, I think they're the first on the market, or the first the first. Well, this is definitely the first reasonably priced, um, the first reasonably priced mini LED TV that I've seen. This TV is like, I think manufacturer suggested retail is $1,000, but I think you can get it for less in a 65-inch. So yeah, um, I think it's pretty good. And so I've now had two OLED TVs. I had a 2017 LG TV, and now I have a 2019 LG TV. And the one thing I can say is that I have never had an issue with burn-in, at least not visually. And they say like, oh, if you're a gamer, don't get an OLED TV because the heads up displays or whatever would burn in. The one thing that I know that they do is like um, I every like few months it does this like pixel refresh thing, and then even when there's a static image on the TV, it shifts pixels slightly so that it doesn't get all that bad. You know, the risk is low, I should say. I've never had an issue with burn-in, and I've had moments where like for some reason I wake up and I go downstairs in the morning, and like for some reason my receiver has turned the TV on and it's been all night. So yeah, I don't really have a burn-in problem, and I think that it's vestigial of early days of OLED, and I think that it's one of those things where it's not it's not nearly the issue that it maybe once was, and it probably wasn't as bad even then. So it's kind of like not as big a deal. Um, Gaylord asks, "I guess you're not excited about the M1X." I'm excited about it. I'm excited. Here's the thing. I mean, I I I have loved and still love Apple computers, all that kind of stuff. What's becoming difficult for me right now is the fact that the Apple ecosystem workflow is becoming a little too prescriptive for me, and it just and for me, like I don't know, I flexibility is becoming much more valuable to me. Like, and I'll get into this a little bit more when I talk about the M1, but you know, it's kind of good. To Tech Odyssey's leaving. Thank you for the $5 super chat, man. It's good to see you. Hope you have a good rest of the day. Have a good weekend. Maybe we'll play some Warzone. I'm gonna get on the Warzone, I swear. Um, I, I I used to play Warzone like every night, and now for some reason, anyway, I still love Warzone. A lot of my friends are bored of Warzone, and I don't know. I just there's something about like there's something about first person shooter games, especially like battle royale games, where it's just like, you know, you just go in, you play a round or two, you play a round or 10, whatever. It's cool, and it doesn't take a whole lot of like investment. Sometimes the story games can be too much time, too much, you know, whatever. Um, yeah, I agree, Capono. I understand I understand when you're talking about spending $2,000 or more on a television. I understand that if there's a potential problem, people would be worried about it, but it's not nearly the kind of issue that people make it out to be. Like Ace says here, like burn-in is the OLED boogeyman tale you tell your children make sure they turn the TV off. Well, I don't know about that. I mean, but it is the boogeyman tale that I think is, you know, is really the LED manufacturers are still very happy that it exists. That boogeyman tale, but it's not, in my experience, nearly as bad. Michael says, "I bet they didn't go OLED. This is Apple with the iPads because none of the manufacturers could make enough of that variable refresh rate, 30 to 120 hertz." There goes my lawn guy again. Um, they require for the iPad Pro. That's quite possible. That's quite possible. I don't know what goes into the technology of that variable refresh rate, if it's scalable to that size or not. But yeah, and I can't. Battlefield 6 cannot come soon enough. Um, yeah, Battlefield 6 cannot come soon enough. Uh, and yes, Warzone. The Warzone map now has Nakatomi Plaza from Die Hard in it. Although I've only played like a few rounds, and I haven't really like looked for it. I haven't found it yet. Haven't seen it yet. But Nakatomi Plaza is now in the game, and they have this like 80s nostalgia skin pack that you can get, where you can get Rambo, you can get um, John McClane, you can and like weapons packs and stuff. Of course, Rambo is like running around with the M60, and I have to admit that the Rambo skin would fulfill like a lifelong, like since my junior high days, fantasy for me. I wanted to be John Rambo when I was like in the seventh grade or whenever, I think seventh or eighth grade when that movie came out. Um, I saw that movie so many times, and wow, it was yeah. Um, Tech for Need says burn-in still happens on OLED. My friend uses her phone full brightness all the time. Yeah, that's an extreme situation though. Like, if you keep your phone screen on at full brightness and you're a heavy user, like you can see it if you go into a store like a carrier store or something like that, you can see the burn-in on the phones that have been sitting there, like, later on in the year after the phone's been out for a while. You can see the burn-in. But that's an extreme situation. Um, and and like I don't know that OLED TVs ever see that kind of punishment. Um, because like the brightness is never really, I mean, their total possible brightness is not nearly as bright as a phone can get usually. Um, so yeah, I mean, if people are using their phones at full brightness, then they're gonna risk burn in a lot more than you would have a risk, say, from a television that you use even like just like 3, 4, 5 hours a day. Now, if you're somebody, and I know people like this, and it freaks me out. If you're somebody who puts your TV on in the morning and leaves it on until, like, some people leave it on 24/7, which to me is crazy. I They can't sleep without the sound of a TV. Crazy. I do not understand. Um, and yeah, I don't understand. So yeah, Tom Herbert says using his mom's 27-inch iPad Pro 10.5, still extremely fast. WWDC to bring out some new software updates, which change the game. I totally agree. And actually, I pulled up an article before we went live about some interesting iPad related stuff. Seems like my all of my stuff um, just refreshed weirdly. Anyway, so yeah, I've got a 2018 12.9-inch iPad Pro, and as I've said this a bunch of times, it hasn't done anything. I haven't done anything with it that actually like seems to push it to its limits, and there might be a reason for that. Let me bring this article in. So here we got this article. This is coming from Mac Rumors, but I saw it in a couple of different places. Apps reportedly limited to maximum 5 gigabytes of RAM in iPad OS, even with a 16 gigabyte iPad Pro. So some app developers are reporting that they don't have full access to all of the RAM that's available on the new iPad Pro with the M1 chip. And it sounds like it is a function of iPad OS and not anything else. So again, WWDC and what is it? iPad OS, are they in the same numbering system as iOS at this point, 15 or whatever it's going to be? The new iPad OS had better rectify this problem, and the new iPad OS had better bring us some options for the kinds of programs that people would want to use on an iPad instead of like a MacBook, right? Um, for me, it would be Logic Audio, Logic Pro, whatever they call it these days, Logic Pro 10X, whatever, Final Cut. If I, all of the Adobe suite would be great. And I know that LumaFusion is like a really good sort of imitation of Final Cut on the iPad, but I don't understand why they would put an M1 chip in an iPad with up to 16 gigabytes of RAM, and not only that, not make it available to use from the apps that can use it. So developer Procreate says Well, somebody tweeted at them, I would have imagined that the 16 gigabyte M1 iPad might get more layers and dimensions than I can currently seem to see with this update. And Procreate responds and says, as of now, all M1 iPads have the same amount of RAM available. As soon as we have access to more, we'll pass them on to you. Wow. Wow. Because, geez Louise, you can get up to 2 terabytes of storage, 16 gigabytes of memory. And the thing is, like, that 2 terabyte, 16 gigabyte of memory machine is freaking expensive. Like as expensive as any MacBook that any new M1 MacBook that you can buy, right? So yeah, the iPad has always had this problem, like Tom Herbert says here, like ever since whenever the iPad has not felt like I've never felt like, oh geez, I need a new iPad. This one is bogging down, right? It's been so powerful that it could chew through pretty much anything that it could do without any kind of real hiccups. And I just don't see I just don't see why that's still an issue. I mean, it makes it hard to advise people to go out and buy new iPads. I mean, there's not really been a game-changing feature in the iPad since the Apple Pencil, and it's really hard. So in my position, like if I'm reviewing an iPad or if somebody's asking me should I get a new iPad, it's really hard for me to say yes, because I know that my 3-year-old iPad can still do just about anything that I'm wanting. Michael says, I'm betting the RAM limit of 5 gigabytes will change since 2020 models had 6. They probably needed to enable it in the OS, or maybe the software they used to monitor it isn't able to see that it's using more. That's a good point. But if I put on my tinfoil hat and think about this, if they gave developers the ability to use more than the 6 gigabytes that were on the 2020 model, then the 2020 model and below that would not be able to run some of these apps as effectively, right? So then that causes Apple a problem, like both a PR problem as well as a customer service problem. Because then if you're somebody who uses, say, Procreate or something that uses a ton of could use a ton more memory, then you're in this situation where you end up saying like, oh, well, I guess I have to get the new iPad because I can't effectively use my programs on the old iPad, and it creates a problem. So I don't know. It's a very interesting issue, which I don't think anybody foresaw. At least not. I mean, I'm sure Apple recognized that it would be an issue, but I don't know that anybody out in the techosphere really thought about it. So Psycho Baldi, I'm going to put that. I think that accent should be there. Baldi, Psycho Baldi says, I just got my 2021 iPad Pro 12.9 upgrade from the iPad 3, and I imagine that the upgrade from an iPad 3 to a 12.9-inch screen plus computer level interiors would be quite the upgrade, and that's awesome. I mean, and honestly, like, you're kind of doing it the way it should be done, which is to say, like, if you can't if you're still using the device effectively, it doesn't matter how old it is. The only reason that most people upgrade is out of FOMO. So why would you bother to upgrade until you're ready to do that, right? So in my opinion, the iPad is a problematic product for Apple because they've made this situation that the iPad is now pushing right up against the laptop products, right? And it's time for the blowing of the grass. Sorry, I should schedule my live streams for a different time because he seems to be coming on Fridays. Um, but now the iPad is pushing right up against the laptop products, and Apple has said they will never put Mac OS on an iPad. But the problem is, like, at a certain point, is the iPad supposed to replace the laptops? Are they supposed to remain like sort of in parallel universes, one using a mobile operating system and one using an actual like desktop operating system? Like, what is the plan? Because now that you've put the same chip inside of the iPad that you've put inside of all of the rest of your computing devices, what are you gonna do? There's no reason for the iPad to have that kind of power if you're not gonna use it, right? So I don't know. I don't know. Tom's still using his iPhone 6s, got that headphone jack, and yeah, I think this is the year. I think that this next version of iOS is when the 6s and 6s Plus will finally lose um, upgrade support. But that phone came out in what, 2016, 2017? So a good 5+ years maybe of new operating system support. Not a bad deal. Not a bad deal, but it's kind of a sad day to see the headphone jack really go the way of the dodo at this point. Um, especially when Apple's releasing lossless audio capabilities with Apple Music that none of their products can actually support. We've got a 5 Great British Pound super chat from Vanilla God. Thank you, man. It's a kick in the balls that the iPad Pro doesn't have a headphone jack. Really annoyed me. Could be excellent for a music library. You're speaking my language, brother. I'll tell you what. I was really so I went from a 12, I think a 20, the first version of the 12.9 inch iPad Pro to the 2018 version, and that was the first one that didn't have a headphone jack. And that just I was so ticked off because not only is the iPad uh, an amazing content consumption device, right? It does have the potential to be, something that you integrate into your your home stereo or something like that. And you take away the headphone jack and it just, it's just blah. So that really annoyed the crap out of me because it just seems to be like trying to push people further and further into this wireless direction, which of course, okay, whatever. Yeah, wireless. Everybody wants wireless. But Apple has shown us the actual like limitations of wireless, especially when it comes to audio. So I mean, yeah, I'm with you, man. It could, especially now that you can get an iPad with like 2 terabytes of storage. That iPad could be like your Plex hub. You could plug that in and just have all of your media coming right off of that. And I do realize that in the day of streaming, that something like local media is not good. But um, yeah, it's to me it just makes me angry. Um, let me see here. Ashton says, my MacBook Air is not charging or turning on. Would it be the charger or the battery? That's a good question. Is this a new MacBook Air or an older MacBook Air? That would be the first question. Uh, because it could be a power supply issue. It could be any number of things. Like if the power supply on your charger burned out, then you might just need a new one. If the battery, however, is dead, then you know it's a trip to the Apple store or a trip to Best Buy to get a new. I guess Best Buy are now certified Apple repair place. So Michael says, a buddy of mine has been testing 2018 versus 2020 versus 2021, and there are some things the M1 chip enabled for him. CR3 raw files won't open on the two older ones. Apple must begin doing something special. Yeah, and that's like, I won't say that that's a niche use, but it's certainly not something that's going to make a difference to the majority of iPad customers, right? But yeah, if that's the biggest difference or one of the biggest differences between the machines, then what is the point of the newer machine? It's an older model, so older MacBook Air. Yeah, I would try a new power supply first. Like, go if you have an Apple store nearby, you can just go in and they have, like power supplies and stuff that you can just use, and see if your charger, the external brick is just not working anymore. If that's not the case, then it could be the battery. It could be any number of things. It's just hard to say. Um, so yeah, I would, if you have an Apple store near you, that would be my first stop. That would definitely be my first stop. Smith, thank you. I do my best to do the honesty thing. Doesn't always win me friends, but it does. It's just something I feel like is really important. So I appreciate that, man. Hugo says it feels like Apple is fighting internally about many topics: App Store, right to repair, high def audio, and it shows in the feature roadmap a lot of inconsistencies. Yeah, and in having conversations with Andrew Edwards and Rene Ritchie and other people who are really more familiar with the way that Apple works internally, they'll tell you that like the Apple Music team doesn't talk to the AirPods team, doesn't, like there's not a lot of continuity where everybody knows what everybody's doing. And in a huge company like that, I guess that makes sense. However, like it doesn't look good for a $2 trillion company to put out features on its streaming service that aren't like accessible by its super expensive headphones. And it seems like there should be some discussion that comes out of that as the services are being announced, right? So that's, yeah. Jimmy Fire Dragon says even the RAM management on my Air 2 is still great. I can get 8 to 10 apps open. Still great, and then have 3 gigs of RAM, and it only has 3 gigs of RAM. I mean, that's the thing about a lot of Mac, well, especially the iPads and the iPhones, is that I'm assuming as a byproduct of the fact that they are able to be really efficient because they have they do the software, they do the hardware, they can really make everything seamlessly work together, that they don't need or haven't to this point needed a lot of the stuff to go along with it, right? They haven't needed 12 gigabytes of RAM or 16 gigabytes of RAM just to run the machine effectively. Unlike Android, I'm not going to say Android devices are worse or anything like that. It just works differently, and more RAM for an Android device is important. But it hasn't been for iPads and iPhones and now M1 chips as well. It hasn't been that big a deal. So Apple has sort of created this system where now they've made their devices almost future-proof, right? They've made their devices almost future-proof in the sense that, like, if you get an M1 Mac or an M1 iPad, then it performs so much better than the previous products in that space, potentially. And it's unlikely, as somebody said in the chat before, it's unlikely um, that people will outgrow them. I mean, the M1 Max, for 90 something percent of everybody who goes out and gets an M1 machine, is going to be more computer than they could possibly ever hope to out outperform with what they're doing, maybe in the rest of their lifetime. And Apple makes great products. So how are we going to get people to buy new Apple machines in the future? Maybe Apple realizes that the future isn't in hardware. The future is in, you know, deliverables like services and stuff like that. But they've created a pretty big logjam for themselves, and it's going to be really interesting. Kayvon asks, "Have I seen Rick Beato's vid on the iTunes Store top 10?" I haven't watched the video. I've seen that he's done several of those videos, and I get salty about it because, like, I had the idea to do that like a long time ago and never did it, and now he's doing it, and I don't want to seem like I'm like imitating Rick Beato. Um, Massimo, I don't know if the full suite is now like natively supported on the M1. I imagine they're usable because but I don't know if it's native support or if it's still through Rosetta 2. Um, let me see. Catching up with the chat. So Michael says, I want progress bars and files, full screen external display to work for every app, audio to work over Bluetooth if I had an interface connected to via USB-C, volume sliders for separate audio sources. It sounds like you want a Windows machine. That's basically, no, but I get it. Like, the thing about the iPad, I mean, we've talked about this. iPad OS doesn't have a real file system. It is very it's a very weird system to use with a lot of USB devices. Um, it wasn't built for a lot of the stuff that people want it to do now, and they've sort of made it work, but it's not what it was originally intended to do. So we have this situation where um, they have this product that's a fantastic product, but the operating system that it's using isn't built to maximize its potential. And that's compounded by the fact that they don't want to maximize its potential that way, because then it will be the same thing as the MacBooks. And they've made a great keyboard for the iPad at this point as well. I mean, it's not pro level. It's not nearly as nice as like the keyboards on the MacBooks and the trackpad on the MacBooks, but it certainly will work. Vac373 with the $5 super chat asks, has there been any word when Adobe will optimize Creative Cloud apps for Apple Silicon? Massimo just asked that same thing, and I honestly don't know. I know that I used Photoshop and Premiere a little bit on the M1 machines that I had, and didn't have too much problem, but I don't go too much deeper into the Adobe suite than that. So if you are deeper into it than that, I don't know what's going on, and Adobe is always weird. They always kind of have their own schedule. And Adobe, I mean, being one of the biggest companies out there in terms of productivity apps for everything, you would think that they would really put the full court press on getting this done, but they apparently haven't. And I don't know what the problem is, because I mean, even audio companies are catching up now. And audio companies, usually because their stuff is so specialized for a very specific use in a very specific use case, it takes them a little bit longer, but even audio companies are catching up at this point. So thanks for the super chat, man. I wish I had a better answer for you, but I don't know at this point what's going on. Alan's back in the house, says he's getting an M1 MacBook Air once all the apps are optimized on the new chip. Yeah. That's once everything works, there's not going to be any stopping Apple and these chips, right? I just, other than the fact that PCs are still much more, how do I say this? PCs are much, it's much easier to create your own system, not just a computer, but your own system of work and everything else in a PC. And now even more so than it used to be. Because that's one of the things that I'm running into right now, is that I feel like going all Mac is a bigger switch now than it was before the M1. I'm not exactly sure why it feels that way, but I mean, if you go all M1, then you really have to make choices very specifically for the M1 architecture, and that limits your choices. As a professional, then it becomes the sort of thing where it's like I have to go 100% this way, because, and for a lot of people that'll mean buying a whole bunch of new stuff. And so I don't know. Michael says Michael's got an update on the Adobe thing. They have some beta versions that run native on M1, but official versions are still using Rosetta. Okay. Well, if they're in beta, I mean, I guess that's better than nothing. That's better than nothing. Well, yeah, I'll get to Massimo's comment here in a second. Do you think there'll be an M1X MacBook, or do you think they'll name it M2? I don't know. I mean, because, well, we're kind of in new territory. However, if we look at how they've dealt with the A series chips, so the A series chips were always like, A whatever Bionic, A whatever Fusion. So the iPad's got like a bump and a little bit of a different name. And then the number changed with each new year, right? So if they keep that naming convention going, then it'll probably be M1X or M1, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious or whatever, right? So yeah, I would guess if I had to put a quarter on the bar for a bet, I would say that they're going to stay with M1, but give it something. If it's an X or whatever, I'm not sure. But yeah. So Massimo says Apple has released the M1, not minding if the software vendors were ready. Yeah, and I've actually heard from some like audio related software vendors that like the amount of lead time that they were given about this change was non-existent, like a couple of weeks. So when they switched to Apple Silicon, like a lot of the software companies just didn't have a lot of lead time. I'm sure some of them did, but some of the smaller ones or some of the more niche ones, I don't know what kind of lead time they had to make the choices. And Apple's done this before. That's why they have the Rosetta situation. They have, the Rosetta Rosetta 2 is supposed to solve this problem over the 2 years that they say it's going to take to sort of flip this whole thing around, and the M series chips being the norm. Vanilla God says the desktop graphics performance is what Apple's going to struggle to match. An M1 chip has a tenth of the compute performance, a decently dedicated GPU. That's true. But again, like, I haven't studied this, so I don't know, but I immediately, my mind goes to the parallel between um, iPhones and Android, whereas like the iPhone has always been able to get by on less because of the way it runs its system than Android. And so I wonder, it remains to be seen, but I wonder if the same might be true for desktop M1 chips. I don't know. And M1 took away the ability to run something like an external GPU. So it's I don't know. I don't know. I mean, the most graphics heavy stuff that happens on Macs, to my knowledge, would be like heavy duty video editing, as well as, you know, compiling of code and that sort of thing. And again, like, I don't know how that necessarily impacts the M1 chip compared to how the Intel architecture worked, and how the Intel architecture uh, coexisted with the graphics processors. But Apple touts the idea that now that this is an integrated system on a chip, the memory, the graphics, the CPU, all that stuff is all in one place, and so they're getting so much efficiency out of not having to, instead, like, they're driving down local roads instead of taking highways. Um, they they at least from what I've gathered, want us to believe that those efficiencies will make up for some of the numbers deficiencies. I don't know. We'll have to see. But if they come out with, like, so this Mac Mini Pro that I keep seeing these renders that it looks like the new Mac Mini Pros look like a CD drive. Like, Apple's not going to make anything that looks that different from all the rest of the computers. I, I, if anything, they would make it look more like the Mac Pros. But I would guess that the Mac Mini Pro is going to look more like a space gray Mac Mini. Anyway, that's another thing. But if they come out with a Mac Mini Pro that has reportedly better graphics performance as well as a higher performing chip, or if it's a 32-inch iMac or whatever it is, then we'll see, right? Yeah, Vanilla God says Apple's taking so long with the 16-inch replacement because they're trying to make an M1 which has faster graphics than the AMD dedicated currently. I don't think they'll have a problem. If you're talking about the AMDs that are in the current MacBooks, I don't think they're going to have a problem equaling or besting those chips. But we all know that the AMD chips, the AMD graphics chips that are in the MacBooks at this point are not like top of the line. They're by any stretch of the imagination. So I think that they're spreading everything out because it makes sense to me that they release the more consumer related computers first, and have 12, like almost 12 months probably of lead time from those releases to get the pro machines ready. And that's not just getting them ready in terms of the hardware. I would imagine that the hardware is already pretty well set in place, but it's all of the little things like software compatibilities and just stuff like that. And stuff like the fact, well, we talked earlier about the fact that the iPad can't use more than 5 gigabytes of RAM, even though it comes with 8 or 16. No one program can use more than 8 or more than 5, which is crazy. But yeah, I don't know. A says, I know it's renders, but the Mac Mini ports look close to Thunderbolt. I don't know, man. I was glad that they still gave like regular USB A plugs on the regular MacBook, but or Mac Mini. But if they go all USB or Thunderbolt 3, USB 4, Thunderbolt 3, whatever you want to call it, um, that's going to be difficult because that machine requires an external display. And still to this day, external displays with USB-C connection are not the norm, nor are they cheap. So I don't know. It's definitely going to be an interesting situation. I haven't really studied those renders. I just looked at them and said, I can't see Apple making anything that looks like that. It's so atypical of any of the rest of the products that they're putting out that it looks like it looks like it's from out of left field. And I know that they're, inside info, blah blah blah. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I mean, that's not the point. I just can't see Apple making anything that looks like that. One of the things about the Mac Minis, especially in the professional ranks, is that the Mac Minis are stackable and they take less, space in server farms, et cetera, et cetera. So I can't see them making anything that has like any kind of aesthetic trait that isn't that takes like an extra investment in time or money. Because that's not what the Mac Mini is about. The Mac Mini is made to go underneath the desk or go into a server farm or something like that. Michael says it looks like a shorter version of the original Mac Mini with new ports, or even the first Apple TV. Yeah, it does. Or like that was at the time when they came out with the first like airport routers and that kind of thing. And Apple is not going to bring out a higher level professional product that that doesn't match with the rest of their product lineup. It doesn't match their higher end professional products. It doesn't match what they've already done in the lower end. So, I mean, nice try, but I don't think so. I'm sure I'll hear about it if I'm wrong, though. I just know looking at that render, like I wouldn't want that on my desk. So, it is what it is. Mac Minis are not meant to be aesthetically pleasing so much as they're supposed to be, just they're supposed to fade into the background. Sathus? Is it Sathus or Sathus? Anyway, my iPad Pro is still blazing fast. My 2017 iPad Pro is still blazing fast and works perfectly. Even enjoy Touch ID over Face ID. I love Face ID, but on the iPad, its implementation is bizarre because I use my iPad 90% of the time in landscape mode. It's especially the 12.9. And in landscape mode, the Face ID is over here. So if I'm holding my iPad, right, then 99% of the time I'm covering the Face ID port, the Face ID, and I just have to move my hand and then it works. So I wish they would put Face ID on the top and the bottom, so we had like in two different places, or if it was in a corner or something. I don't know. It just doesn't work as well in the one place. So Thomas E says there's no technical reason Apple can't run an existing GPU with Apple Silicon, so they chose not to. Says they are confident they can match performance. Maybe, yeah. You might be right. I think maybe that support is still to come, right? That that's something that they could do, but they haven't done yet, and maybe they won't do it until the professional machines are released. But the thing about the eGPU is, you were never getting like full performance out of your whatever graphics card you put in an eGPU. So it was a solution when the graphics processors that you could put into a laptop weren't as powerful as or not nearly as powerful as its desktop equivalent, right? But now, I mean, if you look like, there are 30 series chips in Windows laptops now. And I mean, I have a 2070 in my Razer Blade, and I, there's no problem whatsoever. I know comparing a 2070 on, like the laptop version versus, the 2070 desktop version, it's not the same, but it's close enough for, you know, close enough for rock and roll, as they say. Uh, um, so yeah, I don't know. Michael says, I'm waiting for them to implement something like center stage on the rear cameras. Imagine being able to have it track your subject and crop in and still get 4K. Yeah, that would be something. I mean, center stage, it's not a brand new thing. People are like, companies have had this kind of motion tracking in the past, but bringing it to an Apple device that's going to be in the hands of like tons and tons of consumers is going to change a lot. I mean, imagine if you had something like center stage. You're a YouTuber, you have something like center stage, like, it makes vlogging easier. It makes doing, you know any kind of YouTube video could benefit from that kind of motion tracking. And if the camera quality, like you say, can be 4K, and rival a DSLR, then I think that, well, DSLR. Who talks about DSLRs anymore? Mirrorless, Micro Four Thirds or whatever. If it could do any of that, then we're, imagine people filming YouTube videos on their iPads. I don't. I mean, I just took a picture with my iPad for the first time ever the other day. I was laying in bed and I took a picture of my dormant M1 MacBook, or my M1 iMac sitting over on the desk with the iPad camera. And I guess, that's what I said I was going to talk about, is the fact that I haven't used my M1 iMac at all. And part of it is the fact that, like, I have all of my stuff set up in a Windows world right now. Like, all of this is Windows, and it's all in this like giant workstation that I built for myself. So I can't easily, like, just put an iMac on my desk. This desk has a 50-inch TV in front of me, so I can't really put the iMac there. So that's my problem. But the other problem is, like I said before, it seems like going the Apple route is now a much more, and it won't be this way forever, but right now it's a much more sort of restrictive decision than it was a year ago. There was much more sort of ebb and flow between the Windows world and the Mac world, but M1 Macs are kind of like iPhones now, in the sense that they are very specific devices that have very specific processors in them that are not entirely playing well with every other thing. So it's a little bit confusing, and I just can't see myself. I can't see myself, like, pulling out of all of the stuff that I've got going on here and going into the Mac world. And I wonder if that's going to be an issue for other people. I wonder if adopting M1 is gonna have this sort of like weird separation anxiety that people have, because it's not the same. And so I think it's also going to have, like, I think a lot of people are going to have like analysis paralysis, in the sense that they won't be able to decide, like, well, the MacBook Air is the same as the Mac Mini. The Mac Mini is the same as the iMac. The iMac is the same as all of them. The iPad is the same as all of them. So which one do I buy? And how do you answer that question? Because the use cases, I mean, obviously, desktop computers have a very specific use case, but it used to be that finances came into that equation somewhere. But now when a couple of $100 separates each one of these models, do you buy the MacBook Air because it's the cheapest laptop and there's not really any performance dip compared to the other laptops, or do you go Mac Mini with an external display instead of an iMac? It's it's now like a weird a it's a weird choice that you have to make. And none of them seem perfect. And maybe that'll change when the higher end machines come out. But for me, like I guess that's part of it is like I'm waiting to see like, well, will there be something significantly different about the higher end machines? Like at this point, as Michael says, I think because of the performance of the M1, even at the base models, it makes it more accessible without having to go more expensive. That will force better development of software. I agree with that. The other thing that having the M1 chips be as powerful as they are, even at the base models, like the difference between the 7 GPU cores and the 8 GPU cores is negligible. I did watch Greg's Gadgets video where he compared the performance of the 1299 iMac and the 1499 iMac. The 1299 iMac, and this is something that wasn't highly publicized, only has one fan, whereas the rest of them have two. And he kind of concluded that the 1299 iMac performs significantly worse because of temperature issues. So but that didn't bear itself out with the MacBook Air versus the MacBook Pro. So now that we have M1 Macs that can do basically anything, right? Like, why would people spend whatever much more money it's going to cost to buy like a higher end Mac? I don't like, if you believe the hype, if you believe like everybody on YouTube, if you believe, Apple's claims, if you believe all of that stuff, then why buy anything other than like the mid-tier model of whatever computer you want, unless it's something like the problem I had with the M1 chips as they exist right now, which is I couldn't run enough monitors off of the single USB bus, right? So you get more ports with the Pro machines, and that will be a reason. But how much more performance do you need? Like if they come out with an M1X and 32 gigs of RAM and a bajillion GPU cores and all that kind of stuff, what do you need that for? What do you need that for if almost everything that everybody does, 99% of everybody, even professionals, can do, a huge portion of whatever work they do as long as the software and the hardware is compatible? Why buy something more expensive? That's my question ultimately. Ace says, do you go iPhone 12 or 12 Pro, Mini or Max? All the same processor, just more options. Well, the thing is, like the 12 Pro camera is better. The 12 Pro Max camera is better. The 12 and the Mini, that's a choice, size versus size. They're basically the same, but there's more premium materials used in the Pro models. There are more things that separate the iPhones than currently separate the Macs. And I don't know what the separation is going to be that's going to make a more expensive professional model more valuable, unless it is, well, the new iMac the new iMac Pro has a 32-inch screen, right? Um, or something like that, because the materials are going to be the same. It's, there's not much that's going to change internally other than the chips themselves. So there are a few more differentiating points about the phones as compared to what we know about the computers right now. Um, Michael says, I think down the line, 32 gigabytes of memory will allow more lanes since they borrow from the graphics card. Required 4 ports. Yeah, yeah, multiple display support via Thunderbolt. Yeah, I think that's going to be a big thing. But again, that's a very small percentage of the people who buy these computers, right? I mean, the people who are going to need that much throughput, it's a very specific thing. And with the way that the memory is being managed at this point, being able to get away with 4K and 8K video with 8 gigabytes of RAM is crazy. No one would have ever thought that would be possible. So right now, like, what it means to quote unquote be a Mac is is a much different kind of situation than it was a year ago, because you know you could compare apples to apples to a certain extent when PCs had Intel chips and they were basically the same Intel chips as were in the Macs, and the Macs had the same, we're using the same kinds of graphics cards as PCs could use. You could kind of do the math and figure out like which one's best for you, but now it's a totally different thing, and it feels like buying a Mac and using a Mac is a way different experience if you're a professional, a way different kind of decision than it would have been. Thomas E says, "Do you think most people have reached the point that CPU power doesn't matter for them, even in the Windows world?" Yeah, yeah, I do. At this point, I don't. At this point, I think that other than the fact that in the Windows world, people like more power even if they don't need it, right? Um, and those are the hobbyists, really, so not the majority of the marketplace. I mean, my wife is using a 4-year-old laptop with an i5 in it that performs fine. It's just now starting to show a slowdown. But 10 years ago, if you had a 4-year-old Windows laptop, it would be unusable almost. So yeah, I think we're reaching that point where I know. So I have a 9700K in my PC here. I know that if I swap that 9700K out for an 1100 or 11,000K or whatever, 11700K, I know if I swap that out for like I'd have to buy a whole new motherboard. But I don't think the benefits that I would get from that would outweigh the expense and the time needed to put into doing that. I've got a 2080, and I know that a 3080, 3070, 3090, 3060 even would perform better. But since it's an RTX card, I can get all the benefits of the RTX ray tracing and all the power of processing and stuff like that RTX offers. So why would I'm not really FOMOing after a 30 series card, other than the fact that I would want to like have bragging rights of having one, right? So I don't know. I don't know. Michael says wait. Hold on. We are seeing the iMac struggle at the low end since 4.5K is borrowing memory from the 13-inch MacBooks seem to use. The base iMacs versus higher tiers seem to have more than seem to be more different than the MacBook versus the higher tier. Okay, yeah. Well, that's a good point. And like I said, I haven't put this MacBook through any kind of paces. But then again, the MacBook that we're looking at, or the iMac that we're looking at right now, is an iMac for soccer moms, right? It's an iMac for, productivity uses around an office place. So maybe we're seeing a difference in like what you would compare. I remember when the first round of iMacs came out, and we got new computers at an office that I worked at. Like, everybody, no matter what their job was, unless they were graphic designers or something like that, they just dropped iMacs on our desks, and we were good to go. And I imagine that these M1 iMacs, the 24 inches, are going to be the same. They're not. They're just like Arvin says, just a very general use kind of computer. And can it do stuff? Yeah, you could do a lot of heavy lifting with that computer. But I think once the lineup is filled out, people are going to look at the more expensive model and say, let's get that bigger screen, but it's also, however many hundreds or $1,000 more expensive do I need that compared to this thing I can get for $1,500, right? And I think the answer for the majority of people is going to be, well, $1,500 is a better deal. And especially, like, I don't see the iMacs that are still to come, or the MacBooks that are still to come. I don't see there being like, Necco wafer, pastel colored versions of those. So, yeah. Thomas says, I wonder why Apple Music app is significantly slower than Spotify's or Tidal apps on iPhone. For example, sometimes it takes 2 to 3 seconds to load album artist page. Can it be? It can be buggy too. Spotify and Tidal apps are both faster and more stable. Could there be a reason for this? Man, I don't know. I do hear you. I mean, even on the desktop, Apple Music is slow to load stuff, and it's frustrating. So I really don't know, unless I'm not a computer programmer. I do not code. I don't know anything about this. I don't know if they built the new Apple Music app off of the old code of iTunes, or if it's a totally new thing. Somebody in the chat might know that, but I don't. So it's a big question. But I'll say this: like, the Tidal app on my S21 Ultra has sucked recently. I don't know if it's been a recent update or something, but it has just been buggy and weird. So who knows, man? At the end of the day, I really don't know. But Apple should get that stuff figured out. They really should, because I mean, they make a ton of money off of Apple Music. I don't know why they couldn't code a decent like desktop app for it. But yeah. But I got a meeting in 15 minutes with a potential sponsor. I can't, but yeah. So I'm gonna be done. Hour and a half. That's what we usually get in here on the Fridays. So I hope you guys have a good weekend. If it's a long holiday weekend for you, I hope you enjoy it. If it's not a long holiday weekend for you, I hope you are able to enjoy the weekend nonetheless. I'm going to try and do the same and still meet deadlines that have already passed. Anyway, you guys have been awesome. I really appreciate you guys being here. And yeah, until the next time, my name is Jason. Friday Morning Coffee, talking about the iMacs and all that kind of stuff. Until the next time,